It's times like these learn to love again. It's times like these, time and time again.
Welcome to Storytime at the Rubus, a weekly podcast about the Bonnaroo Music and Arts Festival. I'm Charlotte.
And I'm Daniel.
What you been up to, Daniel?
I have been busy. The day job has been a little crazy lately. I'm starting to get things ready for Bonnaroo slowly but surely. I've been working on the bus a lot. Have you been keeping an eye on what I've been doing out there?
It looks like you've been going over some rough spots on it.
Rough spots. That can mean a lot of different things. That bus has a lot of rough spots. But no, I've just been touching up the paint and putting on a clear coat, getting her all shiny and pretty for this year.
Looks great.
Yeah. We actually have not had to do any maintenance at all this year. It's already running great. So I'm spending more time on touching up the blue paint and putting on a clear coat, which makes it look almost new. It's great. What have you been up to, though?
Working?
Oh, my gosh. Yeah, it's been busy for both me and her at the day job. But there is something else that you're up to, and maybe you didn't want to talk about this, but I'm going to anyways. Tomorrow is your birthday.
Is it?
Yes, tomorrow is your birthday. It's always very easy for me to remember your birthday because it's on Earth Day.
Earth Day.
Yeah, so when we're celebrating the Earth, it's also a great day to celebrate Charlotte.
Okay.
Okay,
you don't want
to talk about this?
You don't have to embarrass me.
So last year you had a very good idea for your birthday. You had asked everyone to wear their Bonnaroo shirt and potentially make a donation to the Bonnaroo Works Fund for your birthday.
Well, last year my birthday was during lockdown.
Yeah. At that time, we thought that we could only have your birthday party with friends over Zoom.
Yeah.
So it's a little different nowadays. Man, a year ago seems like a whole different era.
It does.
But the reason I brought that up and mentioned the Bonnaroo Works Fund is because we have a bit of an announcement. You and I have been working on this for about a week or so now. Would you like to tell everyone?
So we're going to do a Patreon, but it's going to be a little bit different.
Yeah, so you and I have batted around the idea of this for some time. But one point that I have always made about this is I don't want to make any money on any Rubus stuff. I don't want to turn a profit or anything. But I was interested in the idea of a Patreon because it will kind of keep us honest, right? It will encourage us to do shows on a more regular basis, which I want to do now that we have a real Bonnaroo coming in just 4 months. And it will allow us to do some extra stuff for our friends. So maybe some bonus content and something actually at Bonnaroo I'll get to in just a minute. But the big difference with our Patreon is the vast majority of anything that we collect with a Patreon is going to go directly to the Bonnaroo Works Fund. Now, do you want to tell everybody a little bit about the Works Fund?
Okay, so the Bonnaroo Works Fund is like the charitable arm of Bonnaroo. They do a lot of work in Middle Tennessee and locally in the area. They do a lot of good work. You should look them up.
I know that there is a big mural on the side of the rec center in Manchester facing the pool that has a big picture of Bonnaroo. And that was kind of a reflection of the work that the Works Fund has done locally there in Manchester to give back.
They give back to a lot of different nonprofit organizations.
Mm-hmm. And I saw that they had been very active during quarantine last year. During the virtual Roo, they were working with organizations like the ACLU and some other things to get the word out about a lot of social activism, which was very hot in 2020, of course. So seeing them involved and pointing people in the right directions was another big check mark for me as to why I love those guys so much. So with that said, yes, this Patreon is set up where 80% of anything that comes in through our Patreon is going to go directly to the Bonnaroo Works Fund to help fund their activities. The remaining 20% is just to help pay for the bandwidth for this podcast because I want to be very grateful to all of you and be honest, our numbers are shooting up like tremendously now that there is an actual Bonnaroo to look forward to. So I don't want to make any money, but to just kind of put a dent in the bandwidth bill that I have to pay helps a little, even if it's that small 20%. And if that 20% more than pays for the bandwidth, then I'm just going to put it right back into the Bonnaroo Works Fund. And the plan is we're going to make that contribution right before Bonnaroo at the end of August, and we will provide the receipts to help you keep us honest, right?
Right.
So you know exactly where that's going.
Exactly.
So I did want to talk real quick about what our Patreons would be getting in return. So we have 3 different levels. The first one will get you a shout out on the podcast. We'll mention your name. We'll, tell whatever joke you want us to tell or anything like that. Anything you want. I'll touch base with you. We can even get you a little guest spot on the show if you'd like. Second one will get you access to some bonus content. So I'm going to keep myself honest with this. We're going to do a little live Q&A or a YouTube video or a Zoom call once a month. We'll keep in touch with you guys and we'll talk about whatever you would like. And the third one is one I'm excited about because that will get you an exclusive invite to a Patreon-only event that we will have at the bus at Bonnaroo. So it's not going to be the Wednesday Night Rager, but it's going to be a little something that only the third-level Patreons will know about and get the invite to. But we'll make sure to work with your Roo schedule to make sure it's at a time where you're not going to miss a big set or a big event or anything like that. Because I know you would never want to miss anything, right, Charlotte?
Right.
So that'll be in our interest too, because, it's not going to be on Saturday because I'm going to that team show. Yeah. But I wanted to thank everyone. We've gotten tremendous numbers in the past month or so now that Bonnaroo is really back. And we wanted to funnel this in a way to do some good. And we can't think of any better way than the Bonnaroo Works Fund. And I know you agree.
I absolutely agree.
So anything else you want to do for your birthday in that light?
No.
No? That's a pretty good one. All right, but I saw that we already have one Patreon. Sean McCarthy has been a big supporter of us, and he's our first one. And he already put in for $10 a month.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
Yeah, so to give him his first shout out, really appreciate that.
Thank you so much, Sean.
Yeah, we'll talk with you soon. All right, so here in a little bit, we're going to have a fantastic conversation that I had earlier today with some of our best Bonnaroo friends. I got a panel together again. We talked with Barry from the What Podcast, which they had amazing news this past week. We'll talk about in a second. And we talked with Chloe from the Bonnarooster and Kyle the Bonnaroovian. So he is kind of the man about town for all of Bonnaroo. You will see him and then never see him again. I love him so much. But we had a great conversation about what we thought were the greatest sets of all time at Roo and what has the potential to be that this year. With it being the 20th anniversary, I wanted to take a couple of looks back at the history of Bonnaroo. So I asked this to you earlier. I wanted to hear from you first, Charlotte. What do you think was the most legendary set in all of Bonnaroo history?
Well, since I've been going, so since 2013, definitely Paul McCartney.
Yeah.
Is anybody going to disagree with that?
I might disagree with you even listing that because it almost shouldn't count because it's like just such a legendary thing. It just doesn't compare to anything else.
There's nothing that's even going to come close.
Well, what does come close? What would be like the
Nothing.
second greatest? It's just so far away from that?
It's so far removed. Nothing is going to come close to Paul McCartney. That's Sir Paul.
But he's so far and away and in such a legendary category, he almost like doesn't count. What would be like the runners-up to Paul McCartney?
Jack White.
Jack White. We edited this a couple times and she said Jack Black, like from Tenacious D. I'm just going to put that in there. But yes, Jack White was amazing.
Yeah, definitely Jack White.
Why was it so amazing for you?
Again, he's just such a far removed from anybody performer. And also, okay, this is what makes Jack White and Sir Paul makes them on such a good performance level. The little stories that they told with the crowd interaction.
Yes, I agree.
For me, that's what did it. For me, that is exactly what done it. The way they connected with the crowd. The little stories that they told and had that crowd interaction and that crowd connection. That's what did it for me. That is exactly what drew me in.
We mentioned this in the conversation that we're about to have here in just a moment. I think that is one of the things that really puts a performer over the top when they're in tune with the crowd and cutting up with them and stuff.
Lionel Richie.
Yes, we mentioned that too. That show was fantastic.
Richie.
Yeah, no,
blew my mind.
Tell me why he was so great.
I think we were waiting for Jack.
He played
Jack
right
White,
before Jack White that night.
And I was like, gotta wait, for Jack White, and I cared nothing about Lionel Richie, but whatever.
We were shocked.
He was like, all right, y'all, da-da-da-da-da-da. And he was just telling me stories. He was cutting up. He acted like somebody was bringing him drinks. Like, it was hilarious.
No, I remember one time he was playing piano and they brought him a drink. And he's like, this isn't Gatorade. What did you bring me?
Yeah.
It was so funny.
So funny. Just cutting up.
Oh, my gosh,
just blew my mind.
I asked in a chat room that we have going live while we're recording the show if anyone had any mentions. Our good friend Lindsay from Roo Fitness, who helps put on the Speakeasy Roo, he mentioned Lionel Richie as well. But he also mentioned Billy Idol. He was there in 2013. I missed that.
Yeah.
And Lawrence mentioned My Morning Jacket in 2015. I was at a good portion of that My Morning Jacket show in 2015, and yes, it was mind-blowing. And here in a moment, we have Barry telling the story of when he saw them in the early aughts at that legendary show that went on for, 5 hours or whatever? Oh my gosh, I'm looking forward to their show this coming year so much. We'll talk more about that in this conversation. Speaking of which, you want to just jump into that? Hey everybody, I'm here with some of my very best Bonnaroo friends. I'm going to go through the table here and introduce everybody. First of all, we've got Chloe. We've heard from her before. She is with the Bonnarooster. What's up, Chloe?
Hey, Daniel. I'm good. How's it going?
Pretty good. It is a weirdly cold day for the middle of April in North Alabama, so I've been staying inside. How cold is it up north?
Oh, man. It's been all over the place. I think today it's like 40, but then it's supposed to be 70 on Friday, so weather whiplash.
I know, right? All right, we've also got Kyle. Most of you know him as the Bonnaroovian. How's it holding down in Murfreesboro, Kyle?
Hey, Daniel. Thanks for having me on. We're doing pretty good. It's a little bit chillier today, but
I know.
I can't complain too much.
I think this is what we know of it in the South as Blackberry winter. Is this the last one? I can't remember.
Hopes to be. Hope so.
Hey, and you all know that voice. That is from the What Podcast and the Chattanooga newspaper, and now from Consequence of Sound. That is Mr. Barry from the What Podcast. How's it going?
Hey, guys. I'm so glad to be on here with you. Isn't it amazing that we're doing this? I shake my head every day.
I never cease to be amazed.
Yeah, this whole community thing is crazy.
What have you been up to?
Well, the Consequence of Sound thing that you mentioned, we're dealing with a lot of that. That's very exciting for us, obviously. For people who don't know, they reached out and said, we'd like you guys to be a part of our podcasting network. And after about, half a second of discussion, we said, that sounds great.
Congratulations, Barry. That's awesome.
Thank you very much. Yeah, for me, it gets the four of us are about to talk about in front of more people, and that's the truth. I'm not kidding. The fact that we're doing this is amazing to me. That we can talk about a festival, Bonnaroo specifically, year round, is crazy. But obviously we all love it, and that's what that means to me, and it lets us, it gives us more opportunity to talk about it even more. So
you guys are going to be covering a lot of other festivals too. I heard you mention that you're going to be covering Lollapalooza for one thing. Are you also going to be talking about Coachella and some of the West Coast festivals?
That's the plan. That is the plan, is to make it every week. To have a show every week and not just talk about Bonnaroo. Bonnaroo will be the anchor because that's what we know and love, and it's representative. I mean, it does everything that so many of the other ones do, and share lineups and things like that. So yeah, we'll start with that as our foundation, but we'll reach out. The idea is. We've done shows about how to book bands, who books bands, why they book bands. We've done shows about which band, how they decide. So all of those things are sort of, universal. They're not specific to Bonnaroo.
Yeah.
So that's the idea. And just the whole vibe, the thing like what we're talking about. We all love live music, where to go see it, how to see it. The industry, that's the idea. So
the one thing that I think that you won't find in the other festivals that you guys are going to be covering now is the community and that vibe that you're talking about. I know there's a bit of it at some place like Coachella. I think the best community I can think of to compare Bonnaroo to is probably Burning Man, because it's been going on around the same time, and they've got so many weird traditions over there as well. But now that Bonnaroo is about to be 20 years old, that's 20 years of history and weird tradition, like the Bismarcky song, and taking a bead off of the arch at the end of the festival, and there's so many different things like that. I just don't feel like something like Lollapalooza compares. They don't have as many traditions.
To be honest, I don't know. I know some of them do, but things like group camping and the pods, the big difference is it's a camping festival.
Yeah.
You know, you guys, if you listen, Brad makes fun of me because I always say, you know, that's the difference. You're there. What else are you going to do except be a part of it?
Exactly.
But I think that's a huge factor, you know. You're not going to leave in the middle of the day and go shopping at the mall or sleep. Or, I mean, you will sleep, but you hang out at the pool by the hotel. You know, you're going to go see a band that you never heard of because they're not very far away. So it's a big difference.
You're right. It's not the same. Chloe, or have you ever been to another festival? I know you do Riot Festival up near Chicago, right? How is the vibe different there?
It's so like Riot Fest kind of started out. It's all super local. Like their team is really local, like who books it and things like that. But it started out as kind of like a festival set across the city of Chicago at different like clubs, which is really cool. And so they finally kind of brought everything together into this one park. So it's a good community and kind of like a more like punk rock DIY kind of way.
Yeah.
And since it is at like a city park, like music's over at 10 on the dot, you know, because of the noise ordinances in the city. So it is a little bit different. Barry, you're so right about having people on site all the time. Like that's just what you do. So it's a little bit different at Riot Fest, but it's still a really cool, fun community of people who are just really into music. Like there's all the amazing like art installations and, you know, stuff out at the plazas at Bonnaroo. But when people go to Riot Fest, they go for the music. Like it's very clear. So it's a little different, but it's still cool, just different.
I love those smaller boutique festivals like that where they can kind of make a specialty lineup in a way. I really miss Sloss Fest down here in Birmingham, Alabama. They kind of went after the specific alt rock crowd that they have down there. It was so fun. I think the last show that we saw before Arcade Fire headlined was Repeat. They got about half of their set in before it came a big storm, and it was those storms that killed off that little festival. I miss it so much. So, Kyle, how about you? Have you been to another comparable festival?
Yeah, I've been to a handful or a couple throughout like the Northeast. Like in Philadelphia, Jay-Z has a Made in America festival. It's a city festival. It's not camping. It's along the Benjamin Franklin Parkway, and it gets pretty rowdy. It's pretty noticeable headliners, but yeah, there's no camping, so it's a completely different vibe. I had the opportunity to go to Exit 111 2 years ago. I guess you can compare that to Rue. But,
Well, yeah, same location, yeah.
And then the Firefly over at the Dover Speedway. Dover, that was good. I liked Firefly a lot. The music, the lineup was similar to Bonnaroo. However, the venue closes after the headlining act.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. So, like, after midnight, the entire festival venue shut down, and everybody has to go back to their campgrounds, and there's a couple of food trucks, but there's really nothing to do besides getting in trouble.
I have felt that, like... Oh, go ahead, Barry.
I was just going to throw in, I think, Daniel, you guys with the Rubus, and I mean, we have Camp Nut Butter, but Rubus is a perfect example of why it's different. You know, you spend the year planning what you're going to do when you're not listening to music, right? I mean, that's what makes it so different.
It seems like
it's how we entertain ourselves all the time. Yeah, that makes a huge difference.
Well, it's
not Barry, like you were saying. Sorry, Barry. Like you were saying earlier, how we plan all year for this sort of thing, but it's really not that different. The only time that I've really felt this comparison is like with sports. Like I know people that in Indiana, they spent their entire year waiting for that weekend at the Brickyard for that race. They spend their entire year. Or like there's dads that retire and they go to every single Super Bowl, wherever it's at. They spend the entire year planning that sort of thing. And it's like, it's just a separate function, but it's pretty crazy how much time and effort people put into those sort of things.
Yep.
So, yeah, it's like that here in Alabama, too. People spend all year obsessed with the Iron Bowl. It's ridiculous. So, yeah, we all have our obsessions. But, Barry, back to your point, I was going to say that it's not just us. Like, I feel like it's
You're
been
just a great example of it. No, that's not to take away, but, yeah, that's the thing. It's everybody. Their camp, their group camp, their I mean, we think about it year round. There's no
yeah.
question about it.
It's the parachute people. They were once the Roo Shoot, but now they're that 501c under the parachute people. It's Camp Bonnaroo that is already planning some of the specifics of the stuff that they're going to do. I've been in some of their groups, and they're already making plans for the beer exchange and stuff. And I mean, there's so many. Those are just some of the ones that we're close to. There's Super Group and a lot of the other group camps and stuff. That is what makes Bonnaroo. And I had joked around about it, and maybe it's a little sappy, but those are the real headliners to me. There's so many people that we won't have seen in 2.5 years. So yeah, it's going to be ridiculous.
That's what it's become.
Yeah, group camping. I'm very excited to see what they do with that, since they moved it over away from the grove of trees and the plaza, the Nashville themed plaza.
Mm-hmm.
Now group camping's over by Plaza 6, I believe, or over by the highway toll booth.
Well, yeah, they're right next to us now, so it's going to be right behind the general admission RV camping. And I'm excited because they're getting their own group plaza now too. And I don't want to put the cart before the horse, but there's a lot of talk about fan-driven content that will be happening there. So I think we'll be learning more about that in the months to come. I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm really excited too. I had the opportunity to visit one of the workshops that the parachute people hosted in 2019. So I'm looking forward to see what they have for us this year.
Yeah, I think they're planning stuff already too. All right, so we touched on the fact that this is going to be the 20th anniversary of Bonnaroo. There is a long storied history now, not just of these fun camp things, but of the headliners. And that's kind of what I wanted to touch on today. I had kind of texted everybody ahead of time so they could do a little homework. I wanted to hear from everybody, what do you think is the one most legendary set in this 20-year history of Bonnaroo? And also, what do you think has the chance to be that this year? So I'm just going to randomly pick a name out of my head and go to Kyle first. So Kyle, what would you pick for those two?
Most legendary set, Bonnaroo of all time, I'm going to have to go with Reginald Kenneth Dwight, also known as Sir Elton John.
Oh, okay. Why do you pick that one?
Well, it's because I wasn't there in 2013. No, I love Elton John. I grew up on his music a lot, and I just think everything about that set embodied Bonnaroo's improvisational spirit. Ben Folds came out there in the middle of nowhere, and I forget what they performed. They performed Grey Seal, but Elton John performed his masterpiece of an album, Goodbye Yellow Brick Road, and that was my first Bonnaroo. And he closed out on Sunday, and I've listened to the album before, and it's really unique the way that he opens up the album. It's actually the most insane way to start a record. It's the tracks Funeral for a Friend and Love Lies Bleeding.
Mm-hmm.
Listeners, if you haven't listened to that track, put it on after this episode. It's really special, but it's genius, really. Like you hear Elton John's classical training just beneath the surface, and Bernie's lyrics are just such a great combination. It's the way that they started that set was perfect, and it was just that weekend was really special to me, and I could have died after hearing Elton John open up his concert with that song. It was really the coup de grace. But for this year's a really good. I might have to go with Lizzo, first female headliner.
Wow!
Yes.
All right, yeah.
Yeah, that has the opportunity to be really, really special. I think it's gonna be a really good dance party. I like her. I like her attitude about body positivity, and that's like, that goes hand in hand with Bonnaroo's ethics and their moral code.
Mm-hmm. Oh, she is definitely a great fit for the crowd that we have at Roo. And dude, that is a bold choice given how many great acts that we have in 2020. I'm not going to say that you're wrong about that. I think that she's going to bring it. Chloe will agree with you too. She's a big fan.
I'm ready.
Thank you. I'd actually like to give an honorable mention.
Okay, go for it.
Most legendary. Mavis Staples, 2018. Mavis Staples is a living, singing history lesson. The Staples Singers, are often credited with providing the soundtrack to the Civil Rights Movement. and I just love her protest songs. They're rooted in this gospel tradition, and you'll hear it from Freedom Highway to I'll Take You There. And what's really cool is that she actually marched from Selma to Montgomery.
Really? I didn't know that. That's cool.
Yeah. And then during her set, she took all of us. I was in the pit with my girlfriend, and she just took us onto a time machine, and she took us back. And it was really sobering, eye-opening experience that she's still singing today, and she lived through that sort of thing.
I stopped by that set. I wish I had stayed for more of it now that you mention all that. I remember it being super hot, and I was thinking like, oh, I hope she's going to be okay up there.
Yeah. Yeah, she's the saint, really. So I would consider that very legendary.
That's a good pick, yeah.
Mention.
All right,
Thank you.
Let's keep going around the horn. I'm excited to hear what Barry is going to pick for his number one set.
I'm gonna do the thing you probably shouldn't do, and that's hedge quite a bit. Actually, my number one is easy, and I'll come back to it. There's no question about it. But to Kyle's point, I have so many honorable mentions, and if you'll indulge me,
go for it.
Mavis. I've said it many, many times. I cried 3 times that day. We actually went to see Davey because he was one of our Bonnaroo-lette. He kicked off the day, and Warren Treaty was next. I had no idea what we were in for. Michael and Tanya have become friends of ours because of that show. I cried like a baby when he gave his testimonial about being, his PTSD, and his friend who was a fellow former soldier who had been raped and committed suicide. Never thought I would cry at Bonnaroo. Number one, cried during that. We went to Mavis right after, and Kyle, you nailed it when she talked about marching. I was there. She was there with Pops, her dad, marching when they did Freedom Highway. Cried again. I was with 2 of my friends who were Camp Nut Butter mates. And then we went to Nile Rodgers, and, he said, do you guys mind if I do some of the basically number one songs that I've been involved with, and rip through Madonna and Bowie and Daft Punk, and unbelievable. And then he, told a story about year prior he had been told he had cancer and it wasn't going to do. He didn't have much hope, and he had just gotten word that he was cancer free. And so we cried again, gosh. And the 3 of us looked at each other and said, I'm spent. We're going back to camp. That was just one day. The other, to your question, and it's such a great question, the epic shows, everybody has their own personal ones. 2008, My Morning Jacket, I didn't know who they were. I'll be honest with you. It was my second year to be there. I was there as a reporter, so I was so overwhelmed, my head on a swivel, and saw the first 2 hours of that 4-hour epic set and left only because it started raining. And when I got back home, all I listened to was My Morning Jacket. I mean, literally for a year. I mean, it was on repeat, and I'm a huge fan. That show made me a fan of Bonnaroo. So, to your question, that would have to be there. But I am a reporter in the entertainment industry because of the Beatles. So
yeah,
to be able to see Paul McCartney live, it's my second time. I saw him at the Omni years ago, and to be honest, it was Sir Paul back when he was cheesing stuff up and introducing
love songs.
It was silly love songs times 2 hours. Yeah, it was not what I wanted. But the show he did at Bonnaroo, I mean, the same people that I saw Mavis with, we ended up back at camp, and that's all we talked about for 2 days. My buddy Mike he'll be 70. He remembers seeing on Sullivan with his dad. Has great stories about his dad was making dinner. Mike yelled, "Dad, they're on." His dad threw the pasta all over the kitchen, left it on the floor to go watch the Beatles, And that's how important these people are to me. And to be able, and I actually, was fortunate enough to be one of the few people picked to photograph that show, which is still amazing. But that was one of those shows, and that show to me looked like he was there to prove to everybody else in the world that he could still rock and roll with the best of them, and he did it.
That's an interesting point, because like most of his shows, he's already playing for people that have known him for decades in most instances. I think he felt that at this show, he was playing for a lot of teenagers and college-age crowds and 20-something that hadn't listened to the Beatles or his music as much. So he had to, for the first time in probably a long time, he had to prove to them that he knew what he was doing. And it was crazy because it was just so effortless. Even when he was,
it was unbelievable.
Even when he was just like between songs telling stories about hanging out with Jimi Hendrix, like even that just had everybody under a spell, you know?
Well, it's the first show. I mean, I've been doing this 35 years. I've never seen another show where they played, for the hour leading up to the show, they played the music of the band.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The pre-show music was the band. You know, usually they try to hype you up or whatever.
It's usually radio music. Oh man, I know exactly what you're talking about. They actually played Beatles, like Paul music before his set. That's awesome.
Yeah, they played Beatles stuff and Wings stuff. That and the thing that stands out to all of us when we got back to camp was the idea of standing there with an 8-year-old holding his 80-year-old grandfather's hand, singing "Hey Jude," word for word. That's just a powerful memory that I will never forget. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, it was
that just
amazing.
made me tear up.
I said after that morning jacket, I mean, I told people, I said, this is the truth, and I'll try to be real quick. As a reporter, I got in a rut. I was covering concerts, reviewing concerts, and it was that like this same old thing. And then I sort of had to go to Bonnaroo because I was the on-staff, person. And that 2008 show reminded me why I got into the business. That Paul McCartney show reminded me why I got into music.
Yeah.
I mean, it was, and I'm not overstating. I mean, it was incredible. So those are mine.
So what would
others, of course.
What would you say has the best chance of being that type of legendary set this year?
Based on what I just said, I really kind of feel like the Foo Fighters with Grohl has that potential.
Yes, sir.
For him to come strong, to have that McCartney attitude of, we're getting ready to show the world what it's all about. I'm not a huge Foo fan. I like them, but I just think Dave Grohl gets it more than anybody else in the world right now.
He is probably the best living ambassador for rock music, I think.
Yeah, I think that one's going to... And Lizzo, too. I think Lizzo last year, in particular, because of just the momentum she had, I was really looking forward to seeing Miley, but I think the Foo Fighters, to your question, is probably the one.
Yeah, Barry, it was supposed to be a party in the USA.
Exactly.
It still will be. Oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
All right. Last but not least, I'm going to go with Chloe. So what are your picks, Chloe?
Oh, man. I mean, I'm with Barry on this one. Paul McCartney was, absolutely out of pocket. And to your point about seeing, an 8-year-old and an 80-year-old singing along to Hey Jude, when I think of legendary sets, I think of intangibles like that. On any day, Paul McCartney is probably going to be one of the best shows you'll ever see. But there was something so special about that night that I don't think you could bottle or plan. And it was just fire the whole time. And in talking with my friends that I was there with that year, they were like, "Oh yeah, Paul McCartney." We were, it'll be great. We'll take some videos for our dads. They'll be really excited we saw him. It'll be great. But I think people with back catalogs like that, you just don't know how many of their songs you know. So, all of us, by the end of it, we're like, it's over? We knew every song. This is crazy. So that is one that I definitely chalk up as being absolutely amazing. But I think there are two that don't get talked about enough or don't get enough love. and that was the Earth, Wind, and Fire set from 2015.
Yes.
That was a barn burner. That was crazy. And it was super late, too, and they had, like, special guests. That one was bonkers. And to me, kind of everything Bonnaroo is. Like, this kind of legacy act that, again, has a crazy back catalog. I think there was, like, a crazy light show. And, again, like, you're just grooving and dancing with people you don't know. Like, it was just such a blast. That one was incredible. And Florence and the Machine.
Oh my
That one
gosh.
was not getting enough love either.
She might be the greatest vocalist that I've ever seen live.
She's
Oh my
crazy.
Yeah, I had no idea who she was in 2015. I was waiting in line to get into the pit for Billy Joel, and Florence and the Machine was on before it, and she was just prancing across the stage the entire set, barefoot. Barefoot. Oh my, it was the wildest thing. She looked like an angel. She was wearing all white. I couldn't believe. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of that.
I think she and
Beautiful. I bought it as soon as it came out.
I think she and My Morning Jacket are two of the perfect sort of festival bands. And I forgot to mention the Childish Gambino show.
Oh my gosh.
That was so amazing. That was perfect from start to finish. But that's for another reason. So
Our crew was in the pit for that Gambino show.
Yeah,
we
me
were
too.
like transported to another dimension. It was insane.
Yeah, exactly.
That one was bonkers. And that was like of the moment too. Kind of like how you were talking about Lizzo last year would have been extra
Right.
special. She'll still be amazing. But Childish Gambino that year was just of the moment, and his music is always relevant. But in that time, it was just the right set at the right time.
Yep.
That was amazing.
I missed that set actually. I was
Dude.
in Plaza 2. No, I was in Plaza 2. I was checking out Paramore's. I was checking out Half Noise. It's
Oh, yeah.
I can't remember his name. I'm embarrassed right now, but it's one of Paramore's other projects without Haley Williams.
You should be embarrassed that you missed that Gambino set more so, man. That's ridiculous.
No, Half Noise was chill, man. Haley Williams ended up showing up and she shakes tambourine.
Okay, well that is kind of cool though.
Yeah, it was kind of I guess I consider that a secret set. She didn't really publicize it.
Yeah. So Chloe, what would you say has the best shot of being that kind of set this year?
Oh, man. Yeah, it's a dead tie between Foo Fighters and Lizzo for me. I think they're both going to be spectacular, but for completely different reasons and in different ways. But I think the sneaky legendary set is going to be Mark Rebier. I think he is going to just absolutely lose his mind, and it's going to be insane.
Speaking of somebody being like in the moment, like he has just found his moment this past year during quarantine and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a fucking stud. If he's not the disc jockey for the Rage Road Rage
Oh my
in the
God.
Christmas Club Barn, if he's not the DJ for that, I don't know who's.
Yeah.
They will blow the
Someone needs
roof
to
off of
be
that
demoted.
place.
I'm personally looking forward to the turquoise thing too with the Talking Heads, but
Yes.
that's either going to be really, really good or just okay.
Those kind of
Right.
things where they put together something just for that set, like that or the Super Jam, like it's either going to be awesome or
Right.
we don't talk about that.
Exactly. A walk by. as I
Yeah,
call 'em.
exactly. All right, so I'm going to tell you my two real quick. You guys mentioned some good ones. McCartney almost doesn't count because that's like on a whole nother level, you know?
Right.
But like, for me, maybe I'm crazy, but it's Jack White in 2014. That was
so
insane.
good.
Like, when he got announced as one of the headliners, I think there was a lot of skepticism. People knew him like, oh, he was great in the White Stripes and some of these other bands that he's done. But a lot of people were like, really? Him doing his solo act as a headliner? And he blew everyone the hell away that night. It was like we were seeing a legend born on that stage. And it wasn't just like him, improvising with all of his different songs and doing things differently, but it was the way that he was interacting with the crowd. I have never seen a sole person just command the stage and have like a dialogue with the crowd like he did that night. When he did that stuff about like, well, I'm glad you didn't have anything better to do, and some of those other little crazy stories that he told us. He had everyone in the palm of his hand. And by the time he did Seven Nation Army, where it was kind of like a call and response, I've never seen anything like that since. I felt like I was seeing Michael Jordan play basketball during the top of his game, or like Picasso painting something live. It was like you were seeing a master at the top of their game right in front of you. I never will forget that. It was insane. And you guys,
like fully can. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, you guys have already picked what I think is going to be that for this year. It's going to be the Foo Fighters. I think they're going to surprise a lot of people. I think they get a lot of bad rep as a dad rock band, which I hate that term. But they're not really of the time. But that works in their favor because in the same way that Jack surprised a lot of people that year, Dave and his crew are going to surprise people this year.
Yeah, that Jack White one reminded me of the Sturgill Simpson show.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
You talk about a guy trying to prove a point and making it. Walked out there with what? He and a bass player and a drummer and just set the place on fire.
Just white lights, no lasers or crazy things or anything.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. Yeah, I caught part of that.
Yeah, me too. Me too. It was like, wow, that dude just made a point. I'm not sure exactly what it was, but it was a mic drop kind of.
Yep.
Take that.
What year was that Sturgill show? Was that 2018?
Yeah, 2018.
Was it?
What was he wearing? He had a T-shirt. I loved his graphic T-shirt.
Oh, yeah. Who the fuck is Nashville? Or because remember, it was who the fuck is Sturgill Simpson? So his shirt was who the fuck is. I can't remember.
But yeah,
No, I think it was who the fuck is Sturgill Simpson.
Yeah, maybe that's what it was. Straight up.
I think he was trolling everybody because that was his birthday, the day that he played. I remember that too.
All I know is he set the place on fire.
You know, it's funny that some of these shows that we've talked about as some of the best ever have just been straight up rock shows. Whether it be My Morning Jacket or, McCartney, he's a rock star, or Jack White. And it's funny because, like, this year for the 20th anniversary, this is probably the heaviest on rock that it's been in the past number of years.
Yeah, I have a keen eye on Deftones, and Primus sucks.
Yes, Deftones.
Yeah, there's a lot. We started to dig into it. We're not fully dug into the lineup yet, but it is interesting. A lot less EDM, and I think that's probably because there's some of the other festivals have taken some of that from them.
Yeah, Barry. On that point, I think Deadmau5 is really going to crush it. I think he's shutting down the other stage. The last time he was on the farm in 2015, he was on the what stage? So I think that's going to be a show that you shouldn't miss.
Speaking of somebody having something to prove, I feel like he does. I feel like a lot of people feel that since there's been such a big explosion in EDM the past 3 or 4 years, he's kind of like a previous generation's EDM. I feel like he is going to come in and show all the kids that he is still more than relevant.
I'm very curious about that with a lot of these bands. One of our first shows when we come back is with I can't think of it. Sergio, bass player from Deftones, and so I've been under this assumption that all of these guys, the artists, are been holed up in their basements, chomping at the bit, ready to get out and explode, and some are, some aren't. Some of them are, they're been dealing with their families and writing and whatever. So I'm very curious as to what actually happens on the farm with acts. Are they coming out with, fully loaded, or I'm sure they will, but you know what I mean? Or are they, is it going to be like things we've never seen before? I think was thinking back to the Police when they were there. Everyone thought, that because Stuart Copeland had been there before, that it was going to be this jam session like we've never seen. And apparently Sting wasn't having any of it. It was a straight 90-minute set like they'd always done. But you know what I mean? As a fan, we all thought Bonnaroo has this history of doing things different, and sometimes they do and sometimes they don't. They've kind of gotten away from that a little bit, but this year feels different.
I think.
Yeah, Barry, I mentioned it earlier. There's this improvisational spirit,
right?
That's at Bonnaroo, like Ben Folds with Elton John, and Earth, Wind, and Fire with Kendrick Lamar and Chance the Rapper. You really don't know what's going to happen.
I feel like the
My
Morning Jacket pick was a good one because they were a very good pick for the 20th anniversary. And I want to hope that Bonnaroo is just going to give them the stage and just be like, go for it. It's yours all night if you want it.
And same with the Foo Fighters. That's why I think we don't have any idea who we might see on that stage. That's what I'm hoping. That's what I'm thinking. Could be wrong.
I mean, he did a song with Mick Jagger, so you never know.
You know, and one of the shows that I didn't mention, Chloe, you hit it with Earth, Wind, and Fire, was Lionel Richie.
Oh my
I
gosh!
I have to straight up admit, I thought that was the worst pick ever. I was so mad I didn't even go, and everybody I know still talks about that show.
Barry, I was on the rail for that show. It was mind blowing.
I was wrong.
He did.
Yeah.
The reason that it was so good was because he had such a good relationship with the crowd. He comes out and he's already joking around and like cutting up with us. He sees people dressed as him and he's like messing with them and stuff. If he had just gone through a set of just of his hits, it would have been nowhere near as good. But he felt like he's like, okay, I know this crowd. I know how I need to interact with them to get them going.
Yeah.
And like I said earlier, that was like watching somebody at the top of their game. Like he was just a great showman.
I told, I'm very proud of this line, but it also shows how stupid I am. I told somebody the next day he is a wedding singer, but he is the world's best wedding singer.
Yes.
And I stand by that.
I'll never forget, in between each set, he would tell us to call Lionel Richie. He would introduce his song, or a happy or a sad or a love song. And I'll just never forget, you will call Lionel Richie.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome.
It's another one. I mean, it's amazing how many people still talk about that set.
You messed up. You should have went.
I screwed up. I sat there by myself at Camp Nut Butter. I screwed up.
What do you think could be that set this year? The one that you're thinking about missing, but would be a screw up if you did miss?
That's a good question.
Great question.
I'm going to have to get the lineup. Y'all keep talking.
Yes.
Well, I tell you, ever since we've lost...
I think Lana Del Rey on Sunday.
Oh, that is a good point.
Yeah, I think she might be a good sunset.
I feel like most people above 30 are going to like want to skip her, but she has been killing it the past 2 years. She's had 2 albums out that I feel it kind of puts her on the same level as Florence and the Machine, you know?
Oh, yeah. That's a good point.
So, yeah, I think that's a very good pick, Kyle.
I think that's a good one. And I can't believe we've gone this far without mentioning your band there, Daniel. I know you.
I have significant bias.
For your sake, I hope it's every bit as good as you think.
Well, they did a stream today, actually, from Kevin's house down below Perth, middle of nowhere, Australia, facing the ocean, where it was the 10th anniversary of Inner Speaker, one of their first albums. And I'm watching this, and I'm seeing him coming out of his shell. And that was kind of the appeal for them, because I saw somebody that went through some of the same emotional stuff as me when I was a kid or whatever. So it's not just like the psychedelic music, it's like the lyrical content. And I'm seeing him now that he's gotten married, they've got a kid, he's kind of sort of become famous, like he's finally coming out of that. And like I've said before, the stars are aligning. They're playing on my birthday. And yeah. That's why I haven't mentioned it, because I'm so biased. I could talk about this all day.
I know. I'm excited for you. I'll give you 2. Deftones, only because I really knew nothing about them until we had them on the show. Mm-hmm. And I've been such a big fan of hers forever, and she doesn't get talked about as much as I think she should, and that's Janelle Monáe.
Oh, yes.
Absolutely.
I think she's incredible. And the show she did, whatever it was, 6-7 years ago, was everything I hoped it would be. I think she's great. So
she was another one of these performers that's very good with connecting with the crowd. And I guess that's part of her talent skill set, since she's a great actress too.
She's a great actress, and she's a Prince protege, who we should mention. He, died 5 years ago today. I mean, she learned from the very best, but she's like a childish Gambino in that every single movement is planned. It's intentional, and I think her music is great. She's one, probably maybe a surprise one. It might be John Baptiste.
Oh my gosh, yes, I'm a big fan of his. Like,
No idea what he's going to do.
It took me a couple of scans of the lineup to realize that, like, oh, this is the dude from the Stephen Colbert Show. And he's not only a great musician, but he's hilarious, too. So he could be somebody great on stage for the Roo crowd.
There's a bunch. King Gizzard's going to be fun. Goose. Goose is one, we found from the virtual Roo. I didn't know him. Big fan.
Their set on virtual Roo was fantastic.
It was awesome. It was incredible.
I'm really excited for Sunday with Leon Bridges and Brittany Howard. I think those are also those two sets that I'm not missing for sure.
The Leon Bridges set from several years ago at Bonnaroo, like, talk about taking you back. I mean, that was like watching, the 60s and 70s R&B guys. It was amazing.
That was a fantastic day. He played that Friday of 2016. I remember that because it was right before sunset, and we went into the trio of M83 and then LCD Sound System and then Tame Impala after that. I would dare say that was the greatest day in the history of Bonnaroo of the past 20 years.
Yeah, it was a good one.
A good one. And in that line of thought, I feel like the Saturday of this Bonnaroo has the potential to be that. That just, for me personally, the lineup is just stacked on that particular day.
Yeah. Yeah, but except you're going to be standing on the rail for 12 hours waiting for your guys.
I've got some tricks up my sleeve.
All right. Yeah, that's my morning jacket and Isbell, Lizzo. Yeah. That's a pretty good day.
Yeah, I am worried sick about the schedule for that day. I'm hoping that some of the other bands that I want to see are going to be playing late night after Tame. We'll see.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. I mean, we hadn't even talked about the fact that it sold out yesterday. That's just nuts.
There's
crazy. So
up demand.
I'm expecting like 80,000 maybe, but they haven't mentioned day passes at all. I don't know what to think.
Yeah, 80,000 sold out. I mean, it's going to be crazy. I don't even. It's hard for me to wrap my head around it. 80,000 in a normal year is hard to wrap my head around. What it looks like coming out of this is still very, very hard for me to consider.
Barry, how long were the tickets were on sale? Maybe 3 weeks?
When did they go?
It wasn't more than a month.
No, and what I don't know, and we'll find out, what I don't know is how many people actually held on to. You know what I mean? I don't know how many actual new tickets have been sold. Not sure it matters, but maybe it does. What I mean by that is they didn't go from 0 to 80,000 in whatever 3-4 weeks.
It's crazy that the demand is still there. I had been kind of looking at the official resale channel today, and yesterday morning tickets were pretty much face value at a little over $300. But around an hour ago on today, on Wednesday, I looked and it was getting close to 700. Like, people are happy to pay that, apparently.
Well, isn't that the other weird sort of thing is that all the VIP and all those went first, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, it was the GA stuff that was last. Wow. So, yeah, I think word is out.
I'm excited. I'm personally pretty confident that the health situation is going to be pretty close to sorted out by then. I mean, it was just this past week, everybody is able to get their vaccination if you want it. So that's 4 months and change for everyone to get their shot. So I'm feeling pretty good about it. Just me personally.
We'll be there.
Oh, hell yeah. Well, guys, thanks so much. I feel like one thing that people have been sleeping on is the fact that this is the 20th anniversary. So it's something that I wanted to pay a little attention to in the couple of months leading up to September Roo, is kind of looking back a little bit at the awesome 20 years that we've had, and also finding ways to celebrate it this year and beyond. So taking a look back at what we thought were some of the best performances and what could be those in the future was one part of it. So thanks for hanging out and reminiscing with me a little bit today.
Absolutely. Hey, we didn't mention MDU.
I don't sleep on MDU. They're not a joke. They are legit.
I know.
Have you listened to them yet?
We all need to bring him a cookie or a spicy pie.
I feel like the best thing we can do is bring a crowd.
Right, there will be a crowd. That's what it'd be funny if everybody brought him a gift, though.
For serious though, I'm glad to see Bonnaroo paying some attention to like world music like that. I feel like they had not ignored it, but kind of kind of left it behind a little bit the past couple of years. So seeing an act like that is awesome to me, especially nowadays when it's going to be tough for them to, travel overseas. So,
it's interesting you say that. They've done it, but not in great numbers. Angelique Kidjo was there a couple of years ago. I'm a huge fan, and I don't remember who was playing against her, but I went and that was the show where all the industry people were there.
Mm-hmm.
I think the owner of C3 was backstage and Live Nation. I know Ashley Capps was back there. It was a very small crowd, but to be able to see her live was pretty awesome. Same with John Prine. That's another one we didn't mention. That was, to me, it was the last show he ever did. So musically, it probably wasn't his finest performance, but I wouldn't trade having been there for anything in the world.
I know. A lot of us youngsters were over at the Odessa show, and if I had to do it over again, I would have went to go see John.
Man, and then Brandy Carlisle coming out, and that was I should have mentioned that when we were talking about. That's one of my treasured moments in all of music, to be able to have seen that. So
I definitely cried at that show, for sure.
He looked so happy, didn't he?
He was so happy. He was having such a good time.
That was amazing.
Okay.
Yeah, that was great.
Barry, you were talking about the moments that made you cry. I meant to mention this earlier. Last Bonnaroo, not last year, but 2 years ago, whatever, at that Lumineers show, I forget what song they played, but their front man asked everybody to lock arms. And that moment, just kind of looking behind me and seeing the what field full of people hugging and everything, singing along, it broke me. I just like broke down and was inconsolable. It wasn't so much that band or that song. It was just that moment.
Did you see the Nathaniel Rateliff thing? I think I reached out and tried to find. You'll know what I'm talking about. They did a thing at the end where they brought a guy up on stage, and it turned out he had cancer.
Oh, you're talking about Edward Sharp.
Yeah, you know him,
Edward
right?
Sharp.
Edward Sharp. Excuse me.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah,
That was incredible.
I wasn't at that, but I've seen the video of it, and it was just like a magical, impromptu, unplanned thing. That if I was at that, I would have turned into a puddle.
Yeah, I actually had tried to maybe get the young man as a guest, but I think he succumbed to his illness.
You need to touch base
amazing.
with Ron with the Roo Shoot. He has an amazing story, and I won't even begin to try to retell it. You guys should have him on the What podcast to tell the story.
I love it. Yeah, those are the things, man. People have been married. I've seen weddings there. It's incredible. It's for anybody listening who's never been. I can't. We don't even talk about it. Everybody thinks it's just a muddy, sweaty pit anymore, but it's so much. It's so much past that. We don't even talk about it anymore.
That's a whole other conversation.
Yeah, it's
Man.
awesome.
Stuff like this is exactly how I want to celebrate the 20th anniversary. I'm so excited to see you guys again in just a few short months. But yeah, thanks again for hanging out with me today. I love this. Let's get together again before September and get together in September.
Kyle, Chloe, Daniel, thank you.
Thanks, guys.
It was so fun.
Okay, thanks, Chloe, Barry, and Kyle. That was awesome.
I love it when we get these panels together because it's almost as if we're just hanging out next to the bus having just a conversation before
Or like
we go
we're
into
in the
work.
bus at the little table.
Yeah, that too. We actually did do a podcast like that one time. I had a couple of people from Mini-Roo.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm excited to do that again. But hey, we hit up on some interesting points that Barry and them were talking about. Just yesterday, as of us recording this, Bonnaroo has sold out. And I don't mean in terms of like to AC. I just mean they sold out of tickets.
They sold out.
Yeah.
Sold out.
But no, I mean, jokes aside, that is a big deal. I know there was a great portion of people like us that rolled over their tickets from last year because they always intended on going back. But for them to sell out the remaining tickets in just the course of 3 weeks, that's a big deal.
I think people are desperate to get back to to experience live music, to do something.
I do think it's a great showing of the brand of Bonnaroo because I mean there are so many cultural references and TV shows and such to Bonnaroo. So like when they're one of the biggest festivals right out of the gate, as we're in the last stages of the stupid pandemic, for them to sell out that quickly is a showing that it's been 20 years and it's probably going to be at least another 20 years.
Well, I mean, like I said, people just really want to live again. They want that experience. They want to get back to live music, and that's a way to do it.
Yeah, I agree. That is the best way of doing it if you think about it. And we hit on this earlier. I feel that by Labor Day weekend, most, if not all, the health concerns are going to be going away. I mean, I'm going to feel great. I mean, I'm not going to go in and make out with everybody, but I'm going to.
Are you sure?
I don't know. We'll see how things get by on Saturday night when I see Tane. But
I mean, I've got my vaccine.
oh yeah, we've both gotten both rounds of ours, so we're good. I don't know.
I mean, I'm ready.
You ready? Okay.
You ready to go in and start making out with everybody?
I don't know. You're giving me second thoughts now. But I'm there. I'm there to have a good time. We'll see how things go Saturday to see how much of a good time I go.
I mean, maybe I won't be like.
All right. Well, there is one last thing I want to talk about, and all the talk that we had today of like all these different performers and everything has brought up the idea of conflicts. I think, we've gotten past a lot of things that we did have to worry about, and now we've got to go back to the traditional thing that we have to worry about when it comes to conflicts for all the bands that are going to be playing together.
Mm-hmm.
So we had someone in our chat room while we were recording this live bring up the old point of Friday night of Bonnaroo 2014. We had a friend mention that he went to go see Neutral Milk Hotel that night. And I remembered back on Friday the 13th, one of the weirdest nights in Bonnaroo history, there was a terrible conflict. Right about that time, you had Vampire Weekend, Neutral Milk Hotel, and Phoenix basically all playing at the same time. Probably one of the worst conflicts in Bonnaroo history. And then right after that was Kanye, which that's a whole other story or whatever. And I look back at that, and I'm starting to get a little concerned about how Saturday night this coming year is going to go. So have you been thinking ahead about this, Charlotte? It could potentially be heartbreaking.
I'm just going to roll with it.
Okay. But
I'm just going to pretend there's no conflicts and just roll with it. So I'm worried about Glass Animals and Run the Jewels.
yeah, so Friday night it's going to be tricky. So I'm hoping one of those will be late night. I'm going to assume that Run the Jewels is going to be late night, on which I think that makes a lot of sense. But where are you going to put Glass Animals, and how is that going to work with the Foo Fighters? I feel like maybe they open for the Foo Fighters, maybe? Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, it does.
So if you had Glass Animals open for the Foo Fighters on what, and then Run the Jewels on which late night after that, that kind of solves the potential conflict of Friday night. But then again, where would you put Megan Thee Stallion? That makes things tricky. But the one I'm worried about is on Saturday.
Yeah.
Technically, Lizzo is the top billed headliner on Saturday night, and then Tame after her. So I'm thinking potentially that could be a situation like when Gambino technically opened for Fish last time. Remember that? Because his set started relatively early. I want to say it was like 8:30, something like that. And then Fish came on after him. So maybe that's a similar setup to what's going to happen with Tame and Lizzo this year.
Maybe.
Potentially. And if that were the case, then you can get my other favorite bands, My Morning Jacket and King Gizzard, playing late night. So maybe both of those conflict, but I could just kind of bounce back and forth a little bit. The only one I'm personally worried about getting in the pit for is Tame, so that would work for me. But then there's some other good acts on Saturday too. Incubus, Phoebe Bridgers, Jason Isbell. It's going to be tough. So if history is a precedent, we will probably get a lineup in late June, early July as to how the Labor Day weekend is going to look like.
I just need to see Glass Animals and Run the Jewels. That's why I'm here.
That's why you're. Oh, I've been joking about. You know why I'm here. That's why you're here.
That's
for
why.
Those two.
That's why I'm there.
Yeah, man. Glass Animals is going to hit hard this Bonnaroo, because I feel like the Bonnaroo crowd has really fallen in love with them. And they practically gave Bonnaroo a shout out in that one song where they're talking about late nights in the middle of June.
Clearly.
Yeah. I mean, they've done Rue twice before, so I feel like Dave had that in mind. They have connected extremely well, better than most artists in the past 10 years, connecting with the Bonnaroo audience. That show is going to be lit. I hope they get the wet stage. They've earned it.
I also need to see Jason Isbell.
Now, we've seen him a number of times.
I know, but I need to see him again.
It doesn't get old? I like what he's doing. I'm looking forward to that too. But yeah, we've got a few months until we see that schedule and see those heartbreaking conflicts. So let's hope that they work out pretty well. They've got a game of Tetris or Jenga to play over in the scheduling department over at AC. I mean, there's going to be somebody heartbroken no matter what happens.
Okay, so something I keep seeing cropping up on the Reddit boards in particular.
Yes.
There are a few people who keep pondering, is Bonnaroo really going to happen?
Yeah. I don't feel like that's much of a question anymore, personally.
Because COVID cases in some states are on the rise with all these mutations and stuff coming out.
So I was just looking at the New York Times map on this earlier, and the one state that is having a bit of a problem right now is Michigan. And I know that we have a number of Bonnaroovians in the Detroit area in Michigan, because also that's the home of Electric Forest, so they have a very good EDM crowd and live music crowd up in Michigan. I am not as concerned about that because we have, as we mentioned before, 4 months to go. And as of right now, everybody can get their shot. I know because of this past year, a lot of people are nervous. They think worst case scenario. But I feel that we are at a point now where we can look at best case scenario. I don't feel like there's that much reason to doubt Rue actually happening.
Oh, I feel pretty confident, but I still think we all got to keep doing our part.
Oh, absolutely. Now, if that's the point you're making,
yeah,
yes, I totally
agree. That's my point I'm making. We all still got to keep doing our part for sure. Don't let it slip away.
Yeah.
Don't get this close to the finish line and then fall behind.
Yeah, so if you haven't gotten your vaccine, everybody can get it now. And I understand a lot of places have it where it's easier to get it scheduled. Get that done. Me and Charlotte both got both rounds of ours, and I know a lot of friends that have as well. Stop putting it off. It's time to get it. And also, I don't mean to generate controversy about this, but keep wearing those masks when you go into crowded spaces. It's just better safe than sorry kind of situation. I feel like when we get to Rue, there's still going to be a lot of people wearing masks, and that's fine, A lot of cases have come up in the past number of years where it got really dusty, and those masks would have come in handy anyways. Yeah. so not a bad idea.
I don't have to get the Rue boogers.
Hey, what if Bonnaroo sends us a mask in the care package that they send everybody with their tickets?
I kind of figured they would.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Well, the bandana pretty much is a mask.
I mean, but the actual face mask
would
be a great thing for them to include. Maybe they're listening. That's a great little free idea for you guys.
I figured that's kind of would be what it would be.
All right, we have gone way over, and I'm okay with that. We've got a Rue to look forward to. There's a lot to talk about. So you feeling pretty good about things, Charlotte?
Yeah.
I'm worried about those conflicts, but I am feeling pretty good. So with all that said, thanks again to Barry and Chloe and Kyle for hanging out with us. There's a lot going on. We'll have some more content for you. And check out that Patreon. We've got some fun stuff going on for you there. And again, 80% of it goes to the Bonnaroo Works Fund. We love those guys. We want to support them. So with them and with everything else, get out there and radiate positivity.
Bye.
See you next week.